we have Ben Isitt. Ben, would you like me to repeat the question or?
And thank you. It's an excellent and important question. I think we need to start from a recognition that we're not, unfortunately, going to be able to police our way out of poverty and homelessness and addictions and mental health crises, and that the solutions are more challenging than simply augmenting the police budget at a rate greater than inflationary increases. The province has taken a very tiny, tentative step in the right direction. If we look at the Summit Care Home on Hillside Avenue near Quadra, that facility was built by the Capital Region with 320 beds that were intended for seniors managing dementia. But the province, responding to advocacy from City Council and others, has designated 22 of those beds for people managing addictions and mental health issues. And that's what's called complex care housing with supports. And we need substantially more than 22 of those beds if we're going to deal with the crisis on places like the 900 block of Pandora Avenue and a lot of the street level disorder that our officers are being overwhelmed with. And in tandem with those beds of complex care housing, we need more alternative responders on the streets. We need social workers, psychiatric nurses, and we need an amalgamated regional police force so that residents and taxpayers in Oak Bay, North Saanich, Metchosin are contributing towards the costs of providing adequate policing as well as adequate alternative responses on the streets of our downtown.
Thank you very much. And last for group 3, Emmanuel Parenteau. Emmanuel, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm good.
Sure.
So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great. Go
Perfect. Yes, as far as there's a multiple way to handle, I mean, the crime demographic is essentially stemming mainly from the homeless demographic. I've spoken with police, shelter workers, etc. We don't have enough staff within, the VicPD has been so stretched thin that I know that you guys have had to lower what's called the minimum officer ratio. In other words, on any given night, there used to be 14 or 15 minimum officers out on patrolling. Now you've got to, I think you guys have had to lower it down to 12. And then now there's limited time for vacation as well for you guys. And if any job in the world that needs their actual time off secured, it is the police officer to prevent quitting for mental health purposes, etc. And there's a much higher rate of you guys getting leave for injuries than people realize. Because besides the major injuries we hear about, I know that you guys are consistently getting injured on the job. So complex care facilities, the ACT system that's in Edmonton right now, or the ERT, the encampment response teams, like the PACT structure that Jeremy was talking about, those things are great. But when you guys don't have enough police to have any school liaison officers for the last 4 years, when you guys have had to drop your vacation time, the bulk of the solution, and I've read the 800-page, $270 million budget the city's put out. There's a lot of vanity projects in there. I mean, we've got painting projects that are worth $100,000. That's one full-time officer's salary for a year, a well-paid senior officer's salary for a year. The bulk of the solution will have to come from a 10 to 20 full-time officer increase in hiring, which is about a $5 million upgrade to your budget. Like I said, I've looked at the budget. It's a very chubby budget, the one we have for Victoria. I believe by scrapping certain vanity projects, unnecessary infrastructure projects, and future bike lane enhancements, I can find $5 million for you guys to hire the staff that I believe you need with which to form specified units that coordinate with bylaw and council, etc.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. So moving on to...
Similar at council, I think people would see that when we reach across the aisle, and Jeff Young and I have worked extensively on a range of issues, and that's, I think, the philosophy we're going to need to solve these challenging issues. I do think we have to be clear on numbers. It was suggested that $100,000 would cover the cost of a police officer, and I think the statement was a senior officer. The figures we work with in the annual budget process is approximately $140,000 for the salary, benefits, and equipment of a junior to mid-range officer. When we look at the overall police budget of $64 million a year, that's 100 times the total budget for the city's community centers and senior centers. So perhaps a mural is a vanity project. I hear a lot of residents want to live in a community with some color and some life and arts. And The fact is, the police budget is by far the largest expenditure in the city. I think it does need to grow with inflation, but to suggest there's a lot of excess room in the budget, I think we would find thousands of citizens clamoring for those savings. So there's a bit of background noise, but
Tom, I think you have. You 1 sec. There you go.
And I'll just be about just the last couple seconds. I think the reality is, if we're going to grow the police budget beyond the rate of inflation, that will likely require tax increases, and that's a discussion we can have. But I think we just have to be realistic. Whoever's at the table after the election, there'll be some hard and realistic discussions that are going to have to occur.
Thank you, Ben. Emmanuel.
Yes, I'd like to point out that the rate of retirement for police officers in Victoria Police Department right now, the rate of injury and the rate of simple quit is not keeping up to pace with the growth in our population, certainly not the growth in our homeless population or our criminal population. So to grow it at the rate of inflation is not going to keep up with it. Now, painted murals don't save lives, police do. I'm willing to prioritize the number one issue that the Downtown Victoria Business Association highlighted, the top 3 issues businesses have downtown who are now encountering an 8% vacancy rate and growing, is the all related to homelessness and specifically the criminal element of the homelessness. So I'll say it this way, and I'll pose a question directly to Ben Isitt, who in June of 2020, Councillor Isitt asked Police Chief Del Manick to consider or ponder the philosophical notion of quote unquote disbanding the police. This is from CTV. So I'm going to ask him directly, will you commit, I will, to a 10 to 20 officer hiring? The cost will be, again, I'm not a counselor. I don't see the budgets the way they do. I may be a little naive in my estimations, but whether it's $5, $6, $7, or $8 million that we need to find, I'm ranging my increase in police force 10 to 20 officers in the next budget cycle. Is Ben Isitt still in the defund police trip, or will he back up the idea of hiring substantially more officers?
I support increases in the police budget up to the rate of inflation. The police board hasn't yet submitted its 2023 budget to City Council. City Council doesn't write the budget. The police board does, and then it brings it to the councils of Victoria and Esquimalt for approval. For me, I do have trouble supporting increases beyond the rate of inflation, given all of the other demands on our community and the fact that the current model isn't working. Our police officers are on stress leave because they are not equipped or trained to respond to mental health crises. And we do have to conserve municipal resources to ensure specialists are hired who can appropriately respond to those social issues. So I think health problems in the community demand health responses, and health workers, law and order issues do require police officers. So I'll commit today to supporting an increase up to the rate of inflation. I would need to see what the police board is proposing before being able to consider an increase beyond that amount.
Thank you, Ben. So that does conclude Group 3. We will give the opportunity now. Emmanuel, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, sorry. Ben had a couple goes. I'd like to be able to answer his question. The model of sending healthcare workers to emergency mental health causes was tried in the States in several cities, including Seattle, Washington. The net result, it's not being done anymore because the net result is these social workers are getting murdered.
Thank you, Emmanuel.